Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So on today's video, we're going to go over an introduction to volume profile. This, I have to say, has been the most valuable tool that I've ever used in trading and just helped me to take my whole trading to another level. And so even though it might seem like an intimidating tool to use, especially for beginner traders, I'm going to go over the principles of it, the definitions, all the anatomy, the types of profiles there are, and how this can be a greatly beneficial tool for you to use in your trading. Okay, so before we dive right in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. This will help the channel keep growing and bring you more content. And so let's get right into it. Okay, so let's get started here, our introduction to volume profile. So before we dive specifically into the profile, it's important to first let's talk a little bit just about volume and trading in general. So what is volume? As you know, this is one of the most used and important tools used by traders. There's many different types of volume-based indicators. We're just going to talk specifically just about volume in general. So the first concept we need to define before we get into what volume profile is what volume is in general. Volume is the measurement of trading activity that happens in a certain market in a certain period. So in the stock market, for example, we measure in number of shares traded. For futures and options, we measure how many contracts have changed hands, since for every buyer there is a seller and vice versa. So volume can be an indicator of market strength as we look for increasing buying volumes in a bull market and uptrend, for example. Likewise, if volumes are falling on increasing selling volumes, if prices are falling on increasing selling volumes, then we are gathering strength to the downside. We can also spot momentum divergences, for example, where we can see price making new highs on lower volumes, which can indicate an exhaustion and reversal might be in play. In technical analysis, we always talk about looking for high volume breakouts out of patterns or ranges to help confirm the momentum to continue in the direction of the breakout. So for example, if you haven't seen, I have a whole series here on YouTube regarding classical chart patterns. And I always talk about in the patterns, for example, the head and shoulders or a flag or channel, etc. When we want a confirmation of the patterns, we want to see breakouts of the trend lines on high volumes, because then this is going to help us confirm that indeed there are buyers or sellers stepping in depending what direction the breakout is going. And then this helps us confirm that indeed it is a strong breakout with momentum and with higher odds of continuing as larger traders are positioning themselves to continue with that trend. So here's we're just going to go over a couple of examples. So this is how most of you, when you start out, are used to looking at volume. So I have here a 15-minute chart on Tesla. So you can see when we start out, this is what a time-based volume. So that means that this volume is measured on the x-axis on the bottom time-based axis of the chart. So what we have here, since this is a 15-minute chart, that means that every little bar down here is a 15-minute measurement of volume. And as you can see, well, red would be areas where there was more selling than buying, and green more buying than selling. But as you can see here, we're in a uptrend here on this time frame, and you can see how we get some nice spikes of volume coming in. Each one of these lines represents a different trading day, and you can see how we're having continuous gaps up, going up and up with higher buying volume that just keeps pushing price up. Here we have another example. This is in a Sierra chart, so you can see we have volume, and we have here the measurement of, in this case, this is the mini S&P. So this is the number of contracts traded here on the right side, and then this is the price axis. And so as we can see, for example, here we see prices trending up. We had a falling wedge, which in this case will be a bullish pattern. And what can we see here? Where first of all, we can see how it's very evident here that all these periods where the volumes are very low, this is because this is what we call extended trading hours. So this is the hours in the Asian and the European market. And then this periods here where we go up, this is the US market hours. So this is from 9:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. where the bulk of the volume happens in the futures markets. And you can see how the volume goes down a lot on this extended hours. But as you can see here, for example, right around 6 in the morning, buying volume and volume activity started going up right when we started coming up to the edge again of this pattern. And then we had a breakout right here on ascending buying volume, confirming the breakout out of this pattern. And then we can see how we had a pullback over here right at the end of the session. You can see we had very big selling volumes right here near 4 o'clock. But even though with this high selling activity rising, prices failed to make lower lows here. And then we just had a big influx here on the last hour, and then just a big move upwards here. And then we go down again here just for the Asian European hours. But again, this is just to illustrate how we're traditionally used to measuring volumes on the time-based axis. So we measure volumes when we start out usually learning about technical analysis on the x-axis. So now let's dive into what is a volume profile. So with volume profile, we are no longer going to be measuring trading activity on a time-based scale. So on the bottom x-axis, we're going to be looking at buying and selling activity on the price scale, so on the y-axis of the chart, as a histogram, as you can see here. So you can see how price, this can be just whatever time frame you want to use. This can be applied to any market and any time frame. And so as you can see, as price is just moving here on time, this is one daily period, each of these columns here. And you can see how with the profile, the volume profile, we get a histogram coming out. Well, we can even have it on the left or the right. This is just based on preference, how you want to look at it. But what we're measuring is trading activity on a price level, meaning from left to right, not from up and down. So this is going to give us an idea of what the what prices have been most accepted and traders want to participate in the most, and what areas give us low activity, signaling price rejections. So let's first define this, because this is a very, very important part of volume profile. So the volume profile is basically based on a bell curve distribution. For any of you that know or have studied about statistics, you know that the bell distribution basically tells us how certain things, how the probabilities of certain things happening are. And as we can see, if we measure from the mean at the very center, and then we go one deviation left and right, that is 68% of the frequency of the whatever we're trying to measure. So when we have a volume profile, we have an area which we're going to define as the value area, which is going to be the 68% of the traded volume of whatever area we're going to be measuring in the volume profile. So as you can see here, by this box that we have here, we're measuring a profile from this candle up here all the way to the end. And so this area that's shaded in a darker shade of gray, this is going to be the first two, or the first deviation to the left and the right. So this is going to measure the 68% of the traded volume. And then these areas outside are just going to be the other 32% of the traded volume. Now, some people don't really even divide this by the value areas, etc. They just use the profile or the histogram just for the contours and the shapes, as we're going to look further. But this is a very important concept to know, and how we take this number. Some industry, a lot of programs by default have this set at 70% as the value area, but many traders like to use 68% because it's a little bit more precise. So now let's go into the volume profile anatomy. So the anatomy, we have four basic parts to the profile. I'm just going to go over the definitions first, just in theory, and then I'm going to show you a graph later that's going to make it all a lot easier to understand. But the first area we have is the point of control, or POC. This refers to the area in the chart with the most traded volume activity. It tends to act as a magnet for price and makes for very good price targets, and can also reject prices on retests. While there will be one main point of control for any range you measure, every minor high volume node that I'm going to show you later will have its own smaller POC, or its highest activity area. The next important element to know is the high volume nodes, or HVNs. So these are subsequences in the chart with high volume activity. You will see prices bounce on the edges of these and traverse them from side to side, and they tend to be attracted to their POCs. So that means the areas on the high volume nodes where there was the most trade activity. Low volume nodes, or LVNs, are areas in the volume profile histogram that show low trading activity, so meaning there was little interest and rejection, or there was impulsive moves through those prices. So volumes are not accumulated in these areas, as prices were not traded much there. And you're going to see it's very easy to identify them, as they are just little gaps in the profile. And finally, what we talked about before regarding the bell curve distribution, the value area, or VA. So this is the range of price levels in which a specified percentage of all volume was traded for that volume profile range. So by default, industry standards tends to be 70%, but like I said, many people use 68% to be more accurate with the distribution deviations. The upper extreme of the value area is called the value area high, and the lower extreme is the value area low. These levels, the value area high and low, will usually give some sort of reaction when it's retested again in the future, when price comes back into them. So they're very important to also keep in mind. Okay, and now let's look at this from a graph perspective. This is going to make it very easy for you to understand the parts of a volume profile. So for this example, I just took away the candles so you can only see a volume profile by itself, so we can clearly see all the parts of it. So as you can see, we have the dark gray shaded area. This is the value area. So this is the 68% of all the traded volume that we're measuring here in this profile. Then this orange line, this is the main point of control for this entire profile. So this was the price level on this chart that had the most trade activity. Then you can see these curves here, and you can see how these profiles and this histogram sort of stick out. Some areas stick out more than others. That means that these are areas where we had a lot of trading activity going on in them, and that's why the profile just gets bigger and bigger, because it starts building volume and trading activity. So it just starts growing more and further out. And as you can see, we have different, all these are high volume nodes, or all these little areas that are sticking out, and some are bigger than others. So obviously we have some high volume nodes that are more important or prominent than others. But as you can see, even the smaller high volume nodes here will have their own point of control. So I can just make, let me get my drawing tool. I can just get an orange line, so we can say that this is the point of control for this high volume node. This right here would be the point of control for this node. This here would be the point of control for this node, etc. So each high volume node here, whatever point is sticking out the most, that was the price level that we had the most activity within this little cluster. And then these little areas, these cuts in volume, where you see that the profile is just like you have indentations all along here. These are our low volume nodes. This means that price in these areas just traded right through them or rejected off of these levels. So we did not build any trading or volume activity, and so that's why these areas are looked as basically like gaps at the edges of the high volume nodes. And then we have these lines here, the value area. So the lower extreme would be the value area low, and then the higher extreme will be the value area high. So over here we have a Forex chart, a Euro-Dollar chart 1 hour, and we have a volume profile here for this whole screen, all the trading activity that we have here. So let's just go and define all our different elements here in this chart. Let me make my pointer purple. And so as you can see, we have marked here, this is our main point of control for the entire, for this specific chart, for the entire activity that we have here on the chart. This is a 1 hour chart, so each candlestick is 1 hour. So as you can see, this is many weeks of trading activity that we have here reflected. And then you can see here, we have, this is the value. Well, let me actually just make it a line so it's straight. So this right here, this is our value area high. So as you can see, this darker, and again, this colors, this is how I have it set. You know, every user, you can set the colors for your profile and your value area and point of control however you want. I'm just sort of used to always using orange for point of controls, and I like to use dark gray for value area and light gray for the external value. But you know, you can set it however you want. So you can see how this darker shaded area, this is the value area, so the 68% of the traded volume of this whole chart. and this is the external 32% of the traded volume over here. And then over here, we can see we have high volume node. This is like a little high volume node. Here we have a very large high volume node. And then here we have another larger high volume node. And we can see then in these areas, let me just change the color. Let's mark them in black. And let's just make it a square. You can see how this cuts these areas that we have right over here. These are all low volume node areas. These are the areas where we see cuts in the profile. And as you can see, these areas coincide with important areas of support and resistance. So this is where the whole value of volume profile comes, because volume profile is going to help us to really identify very quickly and efficiently areas where we can see price rejection. So you can see how all these areas where we have low volume nodes here in these black boxes, these are all areas that coincide with rejection of prices. So you can see how over here, price came up and we started sort of consolidating sideways. And then this consolidation, that's what caused price to just keep building and building value here, because we spent a lot of time trading in this area. And over here, if we extend this point here, this point here, let me make it orange so we can follow the same coloring. This will be the point of control for this high volume node, where we can see this was the price level right around 1.189, where we had the most trading activity here within this cluster or this consolidation. And the same thing here. This will be the point of control for this volume profile here. This is sort of a smaller point of control for this cluster that we had here, etc. So, as you can see, the volume profile just gives us a very quick way to see where price has been finding acceptance, where it's been consolidating, and where price has found rejection, which always happens at the extremes of the high volume nodes or off of the points of control in this case. So that's just how you can easily identify all the different elements of the volume profile. So now let's talk about the different types of volume profiles that we can have. So there's four basic types of volume profiles we can use. We got session volume profiles. This one shows us a separate profile for each trading day, or in the case of futures, we can also divide them into extended trading hours, because as you know, the futures market are open for about like 23 hours or so. There's another pause, but almost 23 hours a day they're open. But as I showed you before in the beginning, when we were looking at the time-based volumes, during the extended trading hours in Asia and Europe, we have very low volumes as compared to regular trading hours. So a lot of future traders like to divide their profiles between sessions, and that's exactly what I do also in my futures intraday trading. But you know, no matter what market you use, if you're trading crypto or forex, etc., you can just set a session volume profile, and that basically just sets a new profile at the beginning of each trading day. You can also have a fixed range, which is basically the trader will delineate a start and ending point of interest, and then that'll draw the volume profile histogram just for that range that is set. You can also set a periodic volume profile, which you can just have it show a daily profile or a profile every week, every month, etc. Or the last type you can have is the visible range, which is basically a dynamic volume profile that is going to be changing based on the bars and candlesticks that are on the main screen or the trading screen at that moment. Now let's just go over a couple of slides here showing examples of each. So you can see the session volume profile. This is the S&P 500. This is the CFD. And you can see we have a 15-minute chart and we have a session volume profile. So you can see at 6 p.m. Eastern every day, we just have a new profile starting right at the start of the next futures open, and then at the end of the day it just closes, and then we start a new profile. And you can see how each profile has its own daily point of control here for the total daily profile, etc. And you have the same elements: value area, you have your high volume nodes, your low volume cuts in, or your low volume nodes, or the cuts in volume, which, as you can see, coincide with areas of price rejection, support, resistance, etc. The fixed range volume profile, as you can see from the light blue background here, this is a Bitcoin dollar 1 hour chart. This is a profile that I set from this candle up here all the way to this swing low down here, and then that just plots a fixed range profile just for the period that I want it, and it has its point of control and all its different elements. Then a periodic volume profile. In this case, this is a forex chart, the dollar yen 1 hour, and this I set it as a weekly volume profile. So as you can see, this shaded areas here in the back, these are Mondays. This is a little indicator I have on TradingView just to easily see when every week starts. And so you can see we have a volume profile that covers, in this case, the 5 trading days for each week in this forex market. And then finally, the visible range volume profile. This is the stock market. This is a daily Apple chart. And when you have the visible range, this is dynamic. As you move in the chart, this profile is just going to be changing depending what's on the screen. And in this case, at the moment that I took this screenshot, all these candlesticks that were here, this is the volume profile measurement for all the trading activity that was on the screen at that moment. And you can see you have the points of control, you have the high volume nodes, the low volume areas, etc. Okay, and now let's just see some examples as far as low volume nodes at support and resistance. Again, this is one of the most important concepts and why I think this is such a valuable tool, especially for beginner traders to learn to start using, because it's really going to help you to draw and pay attention to important areas of support resistance. So here we have a crypto chart. This is Ethereum US dollar 4 hour chart on Coinbase. So I just opened this chart and I just plotted this purple horizontal lines at levels that just by visual inspection, I can see that they are pretty obvious support resistance areas. You can see down here, this level was resistance, support, 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 support. Over here, this level was resistance, support, some support here, support, resistance. Just a lot of interactions at these levels. Over here we have pretty significant supports over here. This one up here, resistance, resistance, support, support, breakdown, now resistance. And then this one up here acting as resistance on several occasions. So again, this is just an example I plotted just by simply by visually looking for pretty obvious support resistance areas. And now if we go to the next slide, we have the same chart, but I applied a visible range profile to this, and you can see how these levels that I plotted without even having seen a volume profile, look how all these areas that I plotted all coincide with areas where we have cuts in volumes, areas where we have low volume nodes, because like I said, price on high volume nodes is where we have consolidations and price acceptance, and on the edges of this high volume nodes we have rejections, and we have price just going from one extreme to the next, and always, like I said, gravitating towards the points of controls of this high volume node. So here, let's just use the orange lines. If you can see, if I just extend all this points of control here for this high volume nodes, you can see how all this point of control areas coincide with the places where price interacted the most within this price levels over here. And you can see how we bounce off the edges of this high volume nodes. We're just bouncing off edges here, and then we gravitate again towards the points of control and then towards the other extremes of the nodes over here. As you can see here, we gravitate towards the extremes, then toward the upper boundaries. And so you can see how price is just basically bouncing up, going up, then using these levels again as support resistance, etc. So volume profile is just going to give us a lot, sort of like a roadmap to follow as far as how price, where price can be bouncing off of, where we can find demand supply areas, whatever you want to call it, support resistance, etc. I can even go, I'm gonna just show you a few live examples here on a chart so we can observe this. So this is the S&P 500 1-hour chart, and so I'm just gonna plot the different profiles just so you guys can see. So if you go, this is TradingView, by the way, but I personally, well, I use TradingView mostly just for chart analysis, and then I also use Sierra Chart, which is just a lot more advanced and gives me a lot more options and more flexibility. TradingView has a pretty good volume profile options, but unfortunately you cannot split the session, the profile between extended trading hours and regular trading hours, which is something I really need when I do my intraday futures trading. So that's one of the main reasons I use Sierra Charts for that. But for example, like I said, if you put session volume profile, you can see how it just plots a little profile for each trading day here. Let's take that one off. If I put fixed range, you can see how I can just select one point up to the next, and that just gives me a profile here for that specific place. Here, let me take down this number. This row size, you can turn this up or down depending how much detail you want to see on your notes. I like to keep it at a mid-level, like over this is fine, because if it's too fine, it's just gonna look very hard to read. And if it's too low, like if you put this at like 50, it's just gonna look very chunky. So, you know, you just gotta play around with the row size and just see how you can get a nice smooth profile. And like I said, here you can change the style, the color of all these things. I'm just gonna make this darker just so it's easier to identify. but pretty much, so that is a fixed range profile. As you can see, I'm just dragging it and putting whatever range I want, etc. And then the periodic, like I said, is just like the daily, or you can set it for weeks. You cannot do that on TradingView, but like on Sierra and other programs, you can just put it so it sets a profile every week, every month, etc. If you just want a daily profile, then you just set the session, and that's pretty much the same as the daily. And then the last one is the visible range, which, like I said, is dynamic. So as you can see, I have it set on the right side. You can also put it on the left side, however you want, and give it different colors. I don't have the point of control activated. Let me activate it here. And so as you can see, as I move the chart, this profile is gonna just change shape depending on what I'm showing on the chart at that moment. Okay, so that's pretty much like the different types of profiles. And just what I wanted to show you, it's regarding the support resistance. So for example, I'm not even going to put the profile, and I'm just going to visually go ahead and look for support resistance levels on this chart. So let me put the horizontal line. So without even looking at a profile, I can see right around this area. This is a pretty significant resistance area. Right over here, this is a pretty important level. Support, support, resistance, 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 support. Let's see which else. This one looks pretty good too. It's been support, resistance on several locations. Down here, this area looks significant too. Right around there. So yeah, now let's turn on the volume profile, and as you can see, I did all this without looking, I had not seen the volume profile, but just from experience, from using this for many years now, I know that all these areas right here that we have at the extremes of this high volume nodes are going to be areas where we're going to find important areas of support and resistance. All these low volume node areas, you can see how all these areas are important places where price rejected, and we just identify them as cuts in volume in the profile. And this happens because price did not build value in these areas. Price, if you look, for example, an area like, if you go and see this area here, you can see we have a high volume node sticking out because price consolidated a lot in this area. But now, if we want to focus on this low volume node here, and we go back in the chart, we can see how price spent very little time in these areas. Like all these interactions here were either impulsive moves through this area, or they were rejections. Here we did build a little bit of value, but it wasn't like a lot compared to other areas. But so you can see how this low volume node areas and this areas, the extremes of this high volume nodes here, I can even, let's put on a curve. You can see how we have this high volume node here. Let's draw another high volume node up here. So you can see how these areas at the extremes of this high volume nodes where we have these cuts, that's exactly the areas where we have important rejection areas, or areas where price just broke through on impulsive moves that did not build any value at this price levels. Whereas if you look at the point of control here, let's make it orange, you can see that right at this price at 4,162, we had the most acceptance here, and you can see how price was just bouncing off the extremes of this high volume node and tending to just return to this mean, this area where buyers and sellers were in agreement, until we break out and we start building value in other areas, and then start building a volume profile at different levels. Okay, so that's pretty much how we can use volume profile to help us delineate very important areas of support and resistance. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to volume profile. So you can see, like I said, this to me is an invaluable tool in my trading. I think this should be part of the arsenal of any trader. This is a tool that's available in pretty much any platform that you use. Normally it requires some kind of a paid membership. It's not really available for free much, I think, but it's definitely, you know, worth it as you're just building your knowledge in trading, and it's definitely a good thing to know and start integrating into your strategy. If you're interested in learning more advanced techniques and different trading strategies using volume profile for trading, make sure to go to my website and check out more information on my trading with price action and volume profile course, where I go into great detail on more advanced concepts and trading strategies and just trading techniques around the volume profile, and how you can use it to greatly increase your hit rate in trades, and just have a lot better trade management and entries and exits. Okay, so with this, I'll leave you guys. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up if you want to see more content like this on my channel, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.